It's a perilous journey into Kherson. The Russians laid mines on the road and destroyed bridges. Any attempt to make it hard for Ukrainian forces to push forward. But once inside the city, it's clear who's back in control, as crowds dance and celebrate once again in the aptly named Freedom Square. Flashback to early March. This was the city that resisted. The Russians suppressed them. Kherson's residents were tortured and disappeared. But despite more than 8 months of occupation, these scenes clearly show Russian forces failed to crush the city's spirits. Some 200 police officers are now in Kherson, setting up checkpoints, demining buildings and documenting evidence of possible war crimes. But despite the relief, the situation has been described as a humanitarian catastrophe, with no water, electricity, medicine or food.
On the eve of their departure, the occupiers blew up the Kherson thermal power plant and the Oblenego distribution station. In addition, they destroyed the electronic part near the TV tower. That is, all this will have to be restored, but the most important thing now is to carry out the deoccupation, because many Russians could not cross the Dnipro. They change clothes and throw away their military uniforms and try to hide in civilian clothes. They will mostly be preparing some provocations in Kherson.
Russian media released this footage today showing an explosion at a dam in Kherson. Russia and Ukraine have repeatedly accused each other of planning to breach the dam using explosives. Today there is joy in a city that fell silent for months. A grandmother reunites with her grandson. But after the celebrations and reunions, these people still need a livable city, and Russian forces still remain close by.
Well, in the last few minutes, President Zelensky has been giving his nightly address, saying Ukraine had now gained control of over 60 settlements in the Kherson region. Let's get the latest from our Foreign Affairs correspondent, Porrick O'Brien in Mykolaiv. Porrick.
Jackie, watching those amazing images coming out of Kherson City today, you would be forgiven for thinking that this victory came quickly for the Ukrainians. It did not. It was a war of attrition. It took them weeks and weeks of hammering at Russian supply lines, ammunition dumps, and doing so with Western-supplied ammunition and weaponry. And what that did was that it stopped the Russians bringing the fight into the city itself, and ultimately led to the saving of lives, of thousands and thousands potentially of civilian lives. So as well as being an important victory for Ukraine, the victory there underlines the effectiveness of Western supplied weaponry when it comes to saving civilian lives. Today we got close to Kherson City and we experienced firsthand the joy and the pain within. At the sign welcoming you to Kherson region, the sound of liberation is full-throated, full throttle. A group of bikers from Mykolaiv next door have been saving a watermelon, Kherson's signature fruit, since the summer, when this counter-offensive was first promised. It's gone off!
Yes.
Victory, though, is still sweet.
It's very big victory. It's part of victory, but it's path to victory. We think we win.
Soldiers coming in the opposite direction join in. The celebration tempered by the fact that one of their bikers group had been taken by Russian soldiers off the street months ago and hasn't been seen since.
They found something they did not like in the phone of our friend. They took him and his brother, and we can't find him still. It's already, I don't know, from March, from the beginning of March.
So he just disappeared?
Yeah.
About 10 miles out from Kherson City, the ferocity of the fighting that took place here becomes apparent. We got close to the city's airport before we were stopped at a checkpoint. The airport was being shelled and we were told to turn back. On the way out, we came across this. A group of men who were stopping at the side of the road for the night. They had walked out of Kherson City today. There's complexity to liberation as well. We've just come across this group of men on the side of the road outside Kherson city. They've told us that they were all prisoners before occupation. During the course of their incarceration, the Russians brought in 30 extra prisoners to that prison. And yesterday, all of these men were released. They were let go. They're walking to Mykolaiv, which is miles away now. But the 30 prisoners that the Russians brought in, the Russians took with them yesterday. The Russians did not release the prisoners they suspected of partisan activity, but the rest they let go free.
They let all the prisoners go and told us to run. They say you have 5 minutes, and all the prisoners just ran away. The women prisoners were given the keys and unlocked all the doors. Everybody got out, even the guys with life sentences.
Around this fire then, on the outskirts of liberated Kherson, the silhouette of the hardest part ahead, the rebuilding.
Well, joining us now from Kyiv is Alexander Rodniansky, who is an economic advisor to President Zelensky. Thanks very much for talking to us today. First of all, give us some context for this. Give us the significance of what we're seeing out of Kherson today.
Well, it's certainly a pivotal moment for us. Kherson was the only regional capital that was captured ever since the full-scale invasion, that is February 24th. And now Russia has lost it. In other words, we have regained full control over it. So it's certainly a historic moment in this war. And we hope that we're going to keep the momentum. It's also a boost for the morale of our troops, no doubt. And it sends a clear signal about the economic and military prospects for Ukraine. I mean, there's now more certainty for all of our entrepreneurs, firms, and companies that believe in Ukraine even more now, and probably are feeling more confidence when they invest and create jobs. And for the Russian side, of course, it's the reverse. It's a humiliation, and hopefully it will have health repercussions for them domestically.
But as Porik's saying in his piece there, these things are very complicated, aren't they? What are you being told about how the city has been left?
Well, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot to reconstruct, and the recovery process is just beginning. I mean, basically, all the institutions, the local institutions, have been destroyed and dismantled by the Russians over the last few months. And we have to start by rebuilding that. The police has just moved back in, for example. The city is still bespattered with mines, probably. There could be traps all around, just like you've reported. So there's a lot to do. We're not really celebrating yet. This is just one step in the whole war effort.
Exactly. And of course, the big question is what happens next. I just wanted to ask you, though, this was a very different retreat from the one in Kharkiv when the Russian troops just seemed to panic and run away. This does seem more organised. They've moved to fortified positions on the East Bank. What do you make of that? What's your assessment of that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it was a different military strategy. The one in Kharkiv that you referred to, that was really, we took them by surprise. That was a very classic counteroffensive, if you want, where we basically pierced their defense lines, and then they were just taken by surprise and defeated. Here they knew what was coming. They saw that we were building up troops, that we were building pressure, and they had no other choice but to leave, essentially, in order to avoid a calamity. So it's a different military strategy, but for us, ultimately, it's the same result, which means we have full control over the territory. Now, Kherson is still at the front line now, and that still makes it a dangerous place to be. They could be shooting at the city in the coming weeks. They have artillery system placed all around, so we shouldn't be getting overexcited.
Absolutely. And so that is the question. What do you anticipate happens next? Because, do you take from the fact that this was a more organised retreat that they may be more dangerous as a result?
Well, absolutely. I mean, we don't anticipate anything good, to make it short. I mean, the Russians are obviously not giving us any presents. They will try to sabotage any recovery process that we might launch. And of course, they haven't, given up on their ambitions to subdue all of Ukraine and perhaps even regain control over Kherson in a few weeks or months. Who knows? But we expect the worst. I mean, we're well prepared. We know exactly what we're dealing with, and we'll be monitoring the situation very carefully.
As you say, you expect the worst. Winter will be brutal for both sides. Everyone is saying that. Does this victory in Kherson make the Ukrainians more or less likely to look at the prospect of negotiations anytime soon?
Yes, I will say about the winter that the advantage is still on our side. We're the better equipped. We're the better equipped troops. We have the higher morale. The Russian side is now worse equipped. And when winter comes with the weather conditions, that's going to accentuate these differences, if anything else. In terms of negotiations, look, we've always been open for negotiations, but we have made it clear what the conditions are now, ever since the full-scale invasion. First of all, we have our sovereignty and we have our internationally recognized borders, so we expect Russia to respect those as well. They've committed war crimes, so we expect everyone who's been participating in that to be taken to justice.